Today I wanted to talk a little bit more about facing the Claymore, so-called Claymore, the Scottish two-handed sword with Broadsword Targe. So first of all, talking about what the guy with the two-handed sword is doing. So we are borrowing here a little bit from Montante-Reglas, which were used against sword and shield men, so a similar situation to what we have in the Scottish Highlands with Broadsword Targe and the two-handed sword. If I have the two-handed sword and now I have a Broadsword Targe fighter in front of me, his head area is quite well covered. So he is covered with his targe. Even if I do very heavy impact, the targe will withstand that most of the time. On the sword side, of course, he has only a one-handed sword, but still he is quite well protected, especially on his hands. But I can try to cut through his defense, okay, by using this kind of cross-cutting with 1 and 2 cuts, or on only one side. So I can do repeatedly cut number 2 and swing it through. Okay, so a little bit similar to what some staff fighting traditions do. So on one side, I'm following here, and especially if he thinks, okay, he's passing through and he will come on my targe side, and now I can counter, he will be surprised because on this side, maybe I cut away his sword and the next will strike his head. And the good thing is I can do it with movement, so I can move forward and threatening him, or I can move it on the defense by going back with regular retreat and advance steps or with passing steps. And the same on the cut number 1 angle, I can do the same here. The good thing is, with this cross-cutting, I can not only cut here on the high line, but I can immediately switch down and go under his guard. And this is the most vulnerable part of my opponent, because what I can try to do, he's very well protected on the head side, but here on the low line, he's not so well protected. I don't have to cut his legs, of course I can, but I can also feint a little bit high to his head. He will raise his targe, and then I go down to his hips or to his belly and cutting through. So this is one possibility. Feinting a high line attack, turning it into a low line attack, cutting through and going back again. I can also do the same with an advanced step and a lunge by threatening his face with a thrust. Going here, and he's raising his targe to protect himself, and then I go down here to the low line. Of course, I have to be aware that if I cut to his low line, my head is exposed, so I have to be prepared to go back. So here we are borrowing a little bit from the broadsword techniques we are using. So similar with like a single broadsword, I can threaten his face. He tries to cover his face. Maybe he even blinds himself with a targe, and then I go down to the lower line. I cut, and I go back with the protection of an inside guard or of a hanging guard to be safe. Okay, so this is one possibility to fence, to out-fence him. Keeping my point forward, threatening him, maybe faking a high line cut and going to the low line and going back and out again. This is one possibility. Out-fencing him, feinting high, attacking low. Similar to what we do with a single broadsword or what we do with Broadsword Targe. The other thing I can do is now borrowed from Montante-Reglas. Now I can go with a low line attack. Of course, I can draw it down so he will not know if I attack high line or low line. Going for his legs, cutting through, and now instead of retreating on the line, I use this kind of passing footwork through the room. So I cut low here, and with a swing I go up into kind of a hanging guard to have my head protected, and if he tries to rush in, I have here the possibility of doing a hanging guard thrust. So what I'm doing now is cutting through. Okay, this is especially important when I face more than one opponent. If I have 2 or 3 opponents armed with Broadsword and Targe, then I'm cutting through and going up here. And now I come back. Personally, I think with the thumb grip, it's nice to use the back edge to go back the same way, cutting on the low line and going up here in a hanging guard with crossed arms. Here I try to, like with a machine gun, try to clean the room, okay? And if you use really heavy strikes, and he does not know if I come down here to his leg, so my head is exposed, I can also do kind of a horizontal cut and throw away everything which is in my way. So, of course, against the two-handed sword, one possibility for the Broadsword and Targe fighter is to let the weapon pass and then charge in. Many people mentioned it in the comment section, and the tactic itself is not bad. The approach is good, but it's dangerous. It's not so easy, even though the Scottish two-handed sword is not as long as the Iberian Mortante. If someone is standing in front of you like this, with a steel sword, okay, even if it's not sharp, and you're only training, I'm not so sure that you want to run into him when he's doing swings like this. Okay? And I'm not even very good with this, okay, to be honest. Charging in is a possibility for the Broadsword and Targe as soon as I pass through, but it's not the only tactic, and we'll talk about this in a minute. Okay, so to make a summary, tactics and approach we are working with so far is using low line cuts with going from left to right, so just like the Highland da Laimh, okay, to clear the room and to keep him at bay. The same we are using with cross-cutting, with cut number 1, cut number 2, moving forward, moving backwards, okay, or just on one side, okay, or on the other side. And then, of course, because he has Broadsword and Targe, the feinting high, going low kind of possibility. And of course, if he's getting nervous and he thinks you are going low and he is lowering his Targe, doing this big mistake, of course, he's open to that you go to his head. So what you're doing is constantly moving and swinging it around, okay, to keep him at bay. But also, you can rest for a while, especially when you have only one opponent, and you can wait and outfence him a little bit, okay? So cover yourself on the inside. As soon as he attacks, you can go for counter thrust, or you can also do just a simple parry and counter and all these things. But use the length of your sword. Here it is good to feint high and go for the low line, for example, okay? So you can try to outfence him, or just creating this pattern. And one little more advice, if you come in with this cut number 2 angle and you land here and you realize that you maybe step forward, he steps back a little bit and now he's rushing in. You might be able to go back and do another cut, but maybe you were too slow. So here it is not a bad idea, when you misjudged your distance and you are cutting through, that you just use your back edge from here to clear the way, okay? So you're coming here with a cut number 2, he charges in, bam! Maybe you only deflect his attack, maybe you even hit him in the face, okay, because he misjudged and he was charging in too quickly, or the second strike will cut him. Though this is a tactic I would advise so far when facing with a Scottish two-handed sword, someone armed with Broadsword and Targe. Though this is of course not the final result of everything, we will experiment with it a little bit more, also in sparring. But for now it's our conclusion that these are the tactics which work most for the two-handed swordsman. because of